Hello, my name is Karina Hernandez. I teach English Language Arts 2 with an emphasis of supporting English learners who are in the stages of developing and bridging. The activity focus is to learn to read from the autobiography of Malcolm X in an excerpt where he learns to read in prison. The skills are for students to identify the central idea with supporting details. My goal is for students to be able to really articulate the central idea and how the author is able to convey this. So we start the lesson by first um, reading the quote of the day, which is by Malcolm, that reads, "When I is replaced with we, even illness becomes wellness." Malcolm X, El Haj Malik El Shabazz. This activity allows students to focus on the quote. Afterwards, I ask them, who is Malcolm X? What do we know about him? And after the conversation of who is Malcolm X, I play the video from Vocabulary where students listen to this video, which is wonderful. The lyrics of the video are located in their activity for the day so they can follow along to learn more about um, Malcolm X. Once we are done with the video, I share how this autobiography changed my life and how I want students to also learn from Malcolm's process in learning how to read. So that's going to be really exciting. I'm looking forward to it. Once we get to learn about the subject, we begin to um, go over the vocabulary words. So I mentioned how we're going to use visuals to be able to provide a definition with a sentence and a visual, which will allow students to interact with the key vocabulary words of the activities. Once we interact with the activities, with the vocabulary words, the next step is for us to actually listen to the audiobook. And I have the audiobook by Malcolm X through Audible, which I will play while students follow along with their text. And their activity is for them to visualize what the author is reading. So the first interaction is us listening and following along. After we're done listening, we talk about what stood out to us, what were some takeaways, what visuals do we need to add. And so each student then adds visuals to this text to make it come alive. Also, I introduce students to the one pager activity where they will be able to put all of the visuals together into one Google Doc to then be able to present um, the visuals that stood out to them. So after the vocabulary, after listening to the audiobook and interacting with the text, the next thing will be for us to interact with the text a second time. So then I get some volunteers. Each volunteer reads their assigned section. After each assigned section, we annotate the text. We talk about what was this paragraph about, what was the supporting detail, and so this will allow students to have another interaction with the text. And also students are reminded to continue to add visuals to the lesson so that the text comes to life with all of these visuals that represent the text. Once we have the visuals representing the text, we put this together into a Google Doc, which will then create a one pager full of visuals, similarly to what I have going on here, except it's going to be a Google Doc with the visuals that stood out um, to the students. Once they're done with their one pager, the next step is for them to share their learning on Seesaw, a great website that I like to use with my EL students because they're able to record themselves just like I did here in talking about my name. And so students get to share their one pager. It could be 1 to 2 minutes, just verbally sharing what stood out to them. And once they're done with their one pager, and once they've interacted with the text, the vocabulary words, all of that, then the last reading will be for students to go back to the text and answer text embedded questions. Once they're done with the questions, the last thing they have to do is to write a summary of the text where they will go ahead and write down the central idea with the supporting details. They will each have a graphic organizer, sentence starters, and this will allow them and myself to know if they were able to learn from the excerpt of the autobiography of Malcolm X, where he learns to read in prison. My goal is for students to know how to annotate the text, how to be able to identify the central idea via different interactions with the text. And I hope that listening to the audiobook will get them engaged with the text. And I'm excited for this lesson. Again, this activity really, this book really changed my life. And I know that this activity could also help our English learners know that they too can learn how to read if they are diligent, if they follow um, the rules of wanting to read, right? Which has to do with interacting with the text more than one time and yeah, just being engaged with um, what they read. That is my goal, and I hope that this lesson has given you some insight as to how I lead my students through a reading to then be able to write down a paragraph that states the central idea with supporting details. And just like Malcolm said, right? When I is replaced with we, even illness becomes wellness. So putting all of these things together, I believe that it will make all students understand the text and actually learn from this great individual who changed my life, and I hope that could also change my students' life. Thank you.